Oh boy. Basically, the Jerome Powell of the United Kingdom, this is Mr. Andrew Bailey over at the Bank of England, just told, quote, funds and firms, you've got 3 days left. That's right. See, the United Kingdom is undertaking this really kind of unprecedented approach that could quite frankly spell disaster, but it's being undertaken to avoid disaster. As if it couldn't get even more complicated. So look, here's basically what's going on in the United Kingdom, okay? The United Kingdom's like, crap, we're going into a depression. So, Mr. Boris Johnson's government gets laughed out of office because people are like, dude, you had a party during COVID, you're a hypocrite. Okay, bye. So he leaves. New lady comes in, Liz Truss. First thing, her exchequer, this is like their, kind of like their treasury secretary. First thing he does, the exchequer of the exchange, is says, you know what? We're going to cut taxes for rich people, and we'll send stimmy checks for the energy crisis we're facing, and we'll cut taxes on buying real estate because we're a nation of entrepreneurs, and we're going to basically just stimulate the economy. And the markets are like, no, that'd be like Joe Biden right now, literally coming out and going, another $2,000 stimmy check. Oh wait, that's exactly what California is doing with inflation relief stimulus checks. But then again, California is not exactly the best example of what should be done. After all, they're still building a train to nowhere. The bullet train. So, don't even get me started on that. So anyway, now, because of that, and this discovery that their Treasury Secretary basically went partying with hedge funds after he reduced their tax rates that night, the popularity of the new English government is lower than that of Boris Johnson, who was laughed out of office. Not a good start to an administration that's barely 30 days old. Anyway, now, after the result of all this pandemonium that came out in the markets, where basically people are like, okay, wait a minute. So you're going to try to stimulate while at the same time you're keeping rates low. You're going to create so much extra inflation that you're going to have to raise rates and play so much catch up because rates are so much lower than where they are in the United States. You're going to have to play so much catch up. Not only are we thinking you're going to have to raise rates by a full 1 percentage point come November, but we think even at then you're going to be way behind the curve. So what we're going to do is we're just going to dump our bonds, because remember, bonds have a coupon rate associated with them. And so the bond market's basically like, this sucks. Go to cash. Like, the Bank of England and the government are just dumb. Dump. And so they start dumping everything. Well, that obviously leads to prices of things going down, the British pound becoming basically the British peso. Okay, bad joke, it's been overused, but whatever. This is what a lot of people were saying. The value of it fell to nearly parity with the dollar, which is insane. That's basically where $1 equals 1 British pound. We haven't seen that forever. I think my childhood, it's always been like a 2-to-1 ratio. In 2021, it was like $1.40 is how much a pound costs. Now it costs you $1.09, like $1.09. It's pretty low. It's fallen a lot. And so people are like, screw it. Why invest in any kind of bonds in the United Kingdom when we could just dump the British pound, go buy the dollar, and get a quote-unquote risk-free 4% on 10-year treasuries, or like 4.5% on 2-year treasuries? What are we doing wasting our time with this government that on one hand is trying to stimulate and cut taxes because we're a nation of entrepreneurs, and on the other hand, they're breaking the pound market, and then in order to solve the currency disaster they're creating and the bond market they're destroying, they're saying, you know what, we're going to print money. But now they've created yet another deadline, or problem, I should say. And the problem is the deadline. See, today, Andrew Bailey, who is the basically the Jerome Powell of the Bank of England, which the Bank of England is not like JP Morgan and Chase, okay? It's the central bank. It's like the Federal Reserve, okay? So when you hear BOE, think Fed. Andrew Bailey comes out and says, yeah, this is a message to funds and firms involved. You've got 3 days left. You've got to get this done. That's a quote. That is a quote of what he said. He said, quote, we've announced that we will be out of the market. I imputed the market part. We've announced that we will be out by the end of the week. That's because they announced they're going to do an unlimited bailout of basically buying as many bonds as they can to to basically try to create a floor of the price of these bonds that everyone is bailing out of. Because remember how I'm saying, hey, like, why bother with the United Kingdom when these bonds are going to become a lot more worthless when the Bank of England realizes they have to raise rates a lot more, and when rates go up, the value of existing bonds goes down. So let's just dump those now, right? So what you have going on is you have these bonds in England that are plummeting in value. And the Bank of England is basically coming in saying, hey, look, we will buy an unlimited amount of these, and we'll effectively create a floor price where nothing can go below that, because anytime we just touch the valuations of certain bonds at this level, we'll just buy them. Well, the Bank of England is now saying, heads up, we're removing that floor on Friday, so fair warning, good luck, everybody. Okay, this is where things could potentially get really dirty. Because when the floor gets removed, anybody who has, like, these firms and institutions who have not yet liquidated their bonds don't have a floor price anymore. And that means if they need to frantically get market value for their bonds, they might, well, they're not going to have the backstop of essentially their Fed, and so they might get a substantially reduced market value. And when those people get a substantially reduced market value, everybody else who's kept bonds on their books and who hasn't dumped them already is going to have to take mark-to-market losses, because the value of their portfolio as hodlers or diamond handers will be going down into the hole. And all of a sudden, equity ratios at pension funds and firms and anybody holding onto bonds will be totally out of whack, and you'll probably start seeing some cracks. Now, no guarantees, but there's a risk that in the next 2 to 3 to 4 months in the United Kingdom, you could start seeing serious pension fund bankruptcies, business bankruptcies, or just straight up municipal government failures, right? Local governments just starting to fail, go bankrupt. We saw that in California in 2008. That's no surprise in California. But anyway, this is kind of scary because Friday is that deadline. So if you needed another thing to kind of think to yourself about, like, oh my gosh, what else do we have to pay attention to, because this is already pretty venomous? Well, the Bank of England is yet another really, really nasty one. They're telling you Friday. Now, they're still going to be buying on Friday. But come next week, whew. Now, see, Friday also happens to align with the coupon expiration for the programs on building your wealth. That's linked down below, of course. Lifetime access. Remember, some of the lifetime access goes away. But next week and the weeks thereafter could be really critical for the United Kingdom. Because here's the thing. If we end up seeing the Bank of England say, hey, look, we're out, and now all of a sudden you start seeing bankruptcies, that's going to have a ripple effect throughout the entire United States. Because even United States companies hold exposure to businesses in the United Kingdom. And if businesses in the United Kingdom potentially go bankrupt, then it makes you wonder, is this sort of like the tip of the iceberg, where when one thing falls and all of a sudden, let's say 10,000 people lose their jobs because Credit Suisse fires a bunch of people over at Credit Suisse. I know this is different from England, but the same thing sort of happens in England. Then all of a sudden that's 10,000 people who are not getting paid, who now have to fire their handy folk, their construction workers, cancel their real estate contract. They stop spending money on travel and goods and services and house cleaners and fuel for their car because they're like, oh, hunker down, honey, we're screwed. It's bad. And so then you have a real economic depression that you start creating at the same time as still having extremely high inflation. So now you're really in a stagflationary environment where the central banks have to make this decision. Okay, well, do we just try to bail out those firms or do we fight inflation? And at this point, it seems like the choice is going to be, sorry, you're going to have to go bankrupt. And so those businesses go bankrupt. And at the same time, they continue to fight inflation while crushing and destroying demand. You're just going to create a stagflationary depression. And the Bank of England and the United Kingdom could potentially be the tip of the iceberg here. We thought it was China. No. China is just, they're already in a depression. The Bank of England, now we're starting to hit a little closer to home because we actually have monetary systems who are not necessarily coordinated, but they are at the same time trying to hike rates to stamp out inflation. China's actually not doing that. China's trying to stimulate, but not overstimulate. They're already so deep in the doo-doo that they're already in stimulation world. They're like, we're not worried about inflation because we don't even have an economy right now. Like, it's just bad. But this video isn't about China. So watch the United Kingdom, because this 3-day warning, it's just not good. And it's going to lead to more pain and tenuousness in the markets. Again, we could potentially see more of a flight to U.S. bonds because of this disaster in the United Kingdom. Now, interestingly, that could actually lower yields on, the U.S. bonds, because if you get more buyers in the United States, that could lower yields temporarily. And that's also what happened last time around. But I mean, bonds today, the 10-year today is up at 3.94. And this is despite the fact that, people think, there are a lot of institutional investors coming over to buy American bonds. Well, as soon as the Fed's quantitative tightening actually hits, and if we get a miss on the CPI read on Thursday, it could be ugly. Now, I hope not. I mean, best case scenario, we just get, like a 7.5% read on headline CPI, and we go, we start solidifying a bottom. We don't want to say back to the moon. That so far has been bad karma. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. If this stresses you out, make sure to get life insurance in as little as 5 minutes by going to metkevin.com/life. Make sure you get up to 12 free stocks by going to metkevin.com/weeble. And make sure to check out HouseHack, especially if you're an accredited investor. Go to househack.com to learn more. And check out the programs on building your wealth. Go to metkevin.com/join. Thanks. Goodbye.